Good evening, everyone. On behalf of VIBGYOR Group of Schools, my name is Neha and I extend a warm welcome to each one of you. We are delighted to have you here today for a special webinar on building resilience in children, a toolkit for overcoming adversity. At VIBGYOR, we believe resilience is one of the most valuable life skills a child can develop. Through today's webinar, we aim to guide parents to explore key strategies and practical tools to foster emotional strength, adaptability, and help their children to develop growth mindset. Parents, today we'll also learn how to empower our kids to face setbacks, bounce back from difficulties, and thrive in this ever changing world. For this, we have with us Ms. Poorvasha Mathur, a counseling psychologist and child specialist who has been practicing for over 5 years now. Purusha follows a very holistic approach to her therapy, and she absolutely loves working with adolescents and young adults. Having a client-centric approach, she uses a lot of interactive methods while working with children. So in our webinar today, she's going to help us dive into topics like what resilience really means for children, why is it crucial for emotional and academic success, what are common challenges that our children face today and how they respond to them. She'll also share some practical tools that we present that we as parents can use to nurture resilience at home. And also we'll discuss some strategies to help children manage stress, setbacks, and peer pressure. I really, really value your time and presence with us today. And we hope this session will really leave you with some valuable takeaways. So, without any further delay, over to you, Purvasha.
Thank you, Sneha. Thank you so much. Hello, everybody. It's lovely to be here with all of you. As Neha already mentioned, I'm Poorvasha, and today we will be talking about building resilience and how to sort of support our kids in facing adversities and coping up with challenges because kids experience so many different kinds of changes and challenges in their lives. So, we're going to walk through a tiny presentation that I have, and there are certain topics that I wanted to discuss with all of you. And once we are done with the presentation, we will be catering to all the questions that all of you have shared. So give me a second. I'm just going to share my screen. All right. Is my screen visible?
Yes, it is. You can do a full screen presentation
Yeah.
mode.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This works, right?
Yes, it is visible.
Awesome. Okay. So this word resilience, as heavy as it sounds, and we have heard about this word very, very often. Now, what does it really mean? Um, all of us have some idea of what resilience means. I'm not going to focus on that a lot, but just to give a basic introduction of what resilience basically is. Resilience is a skill, it's an ability for any individual to bounce back after facing any challenges, any adversities, any tough situations that they identify as something which is tough, to deal with challenges, changes, and to bounce back from it. All of us have, and especially kids, they have this tendency to like hold on to things if they don't find a way to bounce back and look beyond what the problem is. Resilience is a skill, really helps kids and individuals to sort of bounce back from any challenges, any adversities, any mistakes, or anything that is beyond their control, to bounce back from it and to look beyond what is it that they can do or what is it that they can do to manage things better. Now, being resilient doesn't mean that kids won't experience distress or they won't experience stress or they shouldn't feel sad or they shouldn't feel uncomfortable about things. Being resilient means to have space for all these emotions, but at the same time, have the capacity and enough strength to deal with and manage all these emotions better. So, a resilient person or a resilient kid doesn't mean that they have to be completely strong and emotionally completely unavailable and not feel any emotions, but it majorly means to embrace all emotions as uncomfortable as they can, but at the same time, for us to find ways how to deal with these emotions better or how to cope with these emotions better. Now, why are we even discussing about resilience? Like, why resilience as a skill is something that is so important that we need to discuss or we need to focus so much in building it with kids. To give you a little bit of clarity with respect to statistics, and we'll start with that, is multiple researchers have shown that higher resilience is directly linked to better mental health, which automatically means that when a kid is high in resilience, they have better confidence, they have better self worth, they have better decision making skills, and obviously that inculcates better mental health. Now, right now, in the current times when there is so much of things happening on the internet, we have so much access, and majorly after the COVID period, that was, as much as it was really, really difficult for individuals and for adults, it was a huge drastic change for kids, for very, very young kids who probably just started going to school or went to school for a couple of years, but then there was a complete lockdown and then they had to come back and do online sessions. It was a huge drastic change in their lifestyle. So, considering all of these things in mind, from I think 2021, when the research was done, and there was a data collected, it mentioned that one out of every seven adolescents aged between 10 to 19 years of age were considered to have some or the other kind of mental disorder. Depression and anxiety being one of the most common kinds of mental disorders that kids experience nowadays. And coming from my own experience working with kids so closely, anxiety and depression is genuinely one of the most common disorders that kids are dealing with lately. Literally every other kid that I work with is experiencing a lot of anxiety because there's so many different kinds of changes that they are surrounded with, but they don't really know how to deal with them. And even adults around them maybe struggle with providing them the best kind of capacity to deal with it. So one of the reasons that we are sort of talking about why resilience building is important, it's because resilience as a skill provides a lot of confidence, a lot of self worth to kids so that they can recover from any setbacks or any difficult times that they are dealing with in their life. Um, a lot of times nowadays, kids don't really focus a lot, or they tend to avoid a lot of distressing emotions, because even as adults, a lot of times we don't really um, look at kids going through changes as something very significant or something that can bother a child. Like if there's a class shift happening, if friends are changing, as adults, for us it might be a tiny, very minute kind of a change, and we might not pay a lot of attention, or that's why we might dismiss that the kid might be going through a lot of stressful time. But for a kid, it's a big deal. It's a really big change in their life. There's a lot of worry that they sit with. And if we are able to inculcate resilience as a quality in these kids, then they will have a better understanding in order to how to deal with these situations. And if there's any changes happening, how much they can do and how much they can control to do something with that particular change, and how much of it is beyond their control, that they can't control it and they would just have to adapt to it. So resilience building really helps with adaptation a lot. So they're better with adapting to new situations, new experiences, new people. And that's why we're talking about resilience building as a skill so thoroughly right now. Now, a couple of things that if a child is resilient, how can it impact their life a little bit better? All of these things, like, of course, as we discussed, self-esteem. They become more confident in their own skin. They become more confident in their own decision making skills. They become more confident that, okay, if I make a decision, irrespective of whether it is having a like good consequence or a bad consequence, I will be able to deal with it somehow, or I will be able to figure out a solution somehow. And that kind of mindset really boosts a child's confidence and self esteem. They have this ability to learn from their mistakes. A lot of time, kids are first of all very scared of making mistakes because they feel like don't know what is going to happen, or whether the adults around them will be okay with that mistake or not, or whether they will be able to cope up with it or not. So there's a lot of shame, there's a lot of guilt, there's a lot of fear associated with just the idea of making mistakes. And when kids are occupied with so much of guilt and stress, they do not have the capacity to learn from their mistakes. They do not have the capacity to understand, what their strengths are, what their weaknesses are, or what better they can do the next time. So when kids have a quality like resilience, they have a better understanding or they have a better mindset to even think about learning from mistakes. Similarly, understanding what are their strengths, what are their weaknesses. If they have strengths, using that a little bit more. If they have identified that weakness, they have some weaknesses, instead of being shameful about it, instead of being guilty about it, instead of hiding those weaknesses, they are trying to manage them better and how can I deal with them better. So a resilient kid really is able to cognitively understand these things or at least tries to learn. Self control also becomes one of the very important things that they understand how to learn because they feel more confident in their decision making skills and themselves and their emotions, and they are in touch with their emotions. They are not very impulsive. A lot of times, kids these days, we do have this complaint from them now that kids are very impulsive nowadays, and most of the time we sort of blame it on social media or screen time, that because they're exposed to screen so much. As much as all those things play a role in a kid's self control, their ability to look at mistakes or their ability to manage themselves better and their decisions also impact a lot of their self control. A child who's constantly under stress of every tiny step that they make, they are worried about what's going to happen next. Will it be fine? Will it not be fine? Am I doing it fine? Am I not doing it fine? Since they're constantly anxious, they lack self control. They're very impulsive. They tend to do any tiny thing. For example, like the things that we complain about kids, that they're constantly crying, younger kids, or they are not listening to any instructions. Anything that their parents tell them to do, they just do not want to do. They're being a brat. All of this might come from the place that they're so constantly stressed or they're constantly worried about something that they don't seem to have a little self-control on themselves, and they resort to these impulsiveness. Coping strategies, and this is something we are going to discuss a little bit more in detail in the next couple of minutes, that kids are able to rely on themselves. They become self-reliant because they are confident that whatever skills I have or whatever coping strategies I am going to use, I will push through it or I'll manage if I'm feeling sad or if I'm hurt about something, if I'm stressed about something. For example, if exams are coming up and I'm really stressed about them, instead of constantly worrying about whether I'll score 90% or more than that or not, kids, as much as they feel stressed, they also have better capacity or they feel that they can cope with it. So right now they're feeling stressed, but they have the tools to cope with it. And what are those tools is something that we will also discuss. But kids are able to identify what those tools are, whether they need a walk, whether they want to listen to some music, whether they want to sleep, whether they want to eat something. All these things are a form of coping for them, or whether they want to talk to some adult, they want to talk to their mom or their dad, or any kind of coping is something they're more in tuned with. Similarly, willingness to overcome difficulties rather than avoiding them. Avoidance comes into picture when we are scared, when we are scared of the consequences, or when we are scared of what will others say if I do something. Most of the time, younger kids are not scared about what will happen to them, but they are more scared of what will my parents say, what will my teachers say, will I get scoldings from my parents, will my teachers punish me, what will my friends say. And when these kind of fears are constantly lingering in their minds, they are obviously going to avoid problems instead of trying to face it because they don't seem to have the strength to face it. So resiliency also sort of helps the child to be willing to overcome and focus on solutions more than avoiding certain problems or avoiding problems at all. Optimistic thinking patterns, as we can relate to most of these things, that instead of focusing on only the negatives, that what bad is going to happen to me, what are the negative things that people will say to me, what are the negative things or what are the punishments that I will might go through, kids are able to think more optimistically, that what am I gaining from this? How can I do it better? How can I help my friends to do this better? Or how can I ask my parents to help me in any way? Even as a community building, and I think that's the second point, that social skills and ability to seek assistance from others, it also increases because they feel more if you have a mindset of we will figure it out somehow, or I have my adults or my parents backing me up if I make a mistake, we feel automatically a little bit more relief. And we feel like, okay, let's help my friends also. So if a child, a child who is resilient, who knows how to manage or cope with things, they also automatically become more empathetic towards other people. So they tend to extend some help to the friend. If they see their friend going through a stressful time or being upset about something or being hurt about something, they'll probably go and extend help or try to figure it out together. That come, we both will figure it out together, how to help you. So that social skills and their ability to be empathetic also increases a lot. um, as we discussed, problem solving skills. So the mindset is more solution oriented rather than feeling guilty or feeling scared of a solution or a problem in itself. Ability to recognize emotions, their own and others. And that is also one of the most important things when we're talking about any skill, being it resilient or any skill, that how in tuned we are making our kids and how important we as adults tell our kids that emotions are important. That also impacts their understanding and their ability to think for themselves a lot. If a child doesn't have any idea of how they are feeling, they will automatically not be able to figure out how to manage those things. It's as simple as like if your boss doesn't tell you that hey, you have to make a presentation on this topic, and they just tell you that make some presentation, it's gonna be hell scary for you because you have no idea what do you work on, how do you make the presentation. So you're constantly trying to figure out something that you have no idea about. But if you are given a topic, similarly, if a child is able to understand, and we as adults, we are focusing a lot more on how are you feeling? What does this make you feel? What are the emotions that you are feeling? If we are more in tuned towards it, then by default, we are able to, or we think about managing them better. If I know I'm feeling sad, I will know I have to manage sadness and how do I do this? And similarly, kids are able to recognize it for others. They are able to recognize, oh, my friend is also feeling sad. So what can I do better for them? Or my mama is feeling sad, I saw, or my mama is feeling stressed or anxious. What can I do to maybe help her a little bit more? And that makes the child a lot more empathetic, a lot more confident, a lot more self reliant as well, that they're able to think about how to cope up with these situations. So, resilience as a skill really impacts a child in all of these ways. Now, coming to why are we even talking about adversities at the first place? Like, what are the adversities that kids of this particular age even face when they are going through this particular phase of life? Now, there are multiple. And the most important thing for us when we are looking at challenges is that it's important for us as adults to look at these challenges from a point of view of a child and not as an adult. As an adult, maybe change of a class might be a very natural thing for you that yeah, everybody goes through a change of a class. Of course, from first standard you are going to the second standard, or of course from one section you are going to another section. It's not a big deal. As an adult, it's very easy for us to like just dismiss a change like this. But if you imagine yourself couple of years back when you were going through this, it feels like your entire life is getting uprooted. It feels like, oh, what all my friends are going into a different class. What if I will I be able to make new friends? Will those friends like me? Will those people in this particular class, those kids like me? Will I get good teachers? I really liked my math teacher in the second standard. What if I don't get a good math teacher in the third standard? And these are very genuine worries. These are very, very genuine and valid worries for a child to have. So a change as small as change of a class, and as much as it's a part of life, as much as it's a natural thing, it's also very natural for kids to get worried about it. It's also very natural for kids to be sad about it, to feel very stressed about it. um, Similarly, bullying is something that is so prominent in every form, in every class. It doesn't matter how young your kid is or how old your kid is. kids as young as 3 years old or say 4 years old, when they start mingling with other people, they experience some or the other kind of bullying. Um, and a lot of times, again, from a perspective of a child, from a perspective of the adult, if if my friend is saying that, oh, you are so fat, I'm not going to play with you, that might not be a big deal. We as adults might tell kids that, hey, don't worry about that so much, or don't care about whatever other people are saying. But from a kid's perspective, my friend is saying this to me, of course I will care, of course it will worry me. And this is just a tiny example of bullying, but bullying, kids experience bullying in very, very different forms throughout their life. So that is one of the biggest changes that they feel. And as and when they grow up, the kind of bullying that they experience, that also completely change. So as an adult, it becomes really important for us to pay attention to these things also, and to not dismiss them, but to actually sit with the child and to at least listen to the child, that what is happening with you, what kind of bullying are you experiencing, and of course then figuring things out, which we'll come to later, that how to build resilience is, of course, we're going to discuss about it. But yes, bullying is one of the biggest kind of challenges that kids face. Then fight with friends or family. Again, this might seem like a very tiny thing, but from a child's perspective, how fights usually impact kids is, as adults, when two adults are fighting, you probably have a reason or understanding of why you are fighting. Maybe after a fight, two adults also have an understanding that what is going to happen next. You have, so it's not scary for you that what is going to happen next. But when a child experiences fights with either their friends or they witness fight of two adults, one of the biggest fears that they stay with is that they have no idea what's going to happen after the fight. Are they, like, if they're having a fight with their friend, then they feel like, will that friend still be friends with me? Will they still like me? What is going to happen? How to make up with your friend? Will that friend not going to talk to me ever again? What is going to happen is something that, these are legit questions that kids stay with. And when as adults we are not really talking to kids about it, it just stays with them, and they're constantly scared of the idea of fights in general. Similarly, when they witness two adults fighting, first of all, they don't have understanding of why these adults are fighting. Second of all, they don't know what is going to happen next. Will they get impacted? Will mama papa talk to them again? What have they been a bad, had they did something because of that the fight happened? And if we don't really talk to the kids about these things, again the fear stays with them, and then they have a fear of fights. They have a fear of voicing their opinions out, that what if I say something and someone will get upset, so it's better not to say anything. One of the examples that a lot of times parents struggle with certain kids, that they don't like speaking up in public. They're always okay and they're fairly fine with speaking up or talking to me at home. They're constantly chattering. But when it comes to asking a question in the class, or debate competitions or any other competitions, or if a teacher is asking a question or an opinion from the child, then they completely do not talk. They absolutely shut down and they don't talk. And one of the reasons could be that they're so scared to voicing their opinion, that what if anything that they're saying is wrong? And then, anything can happen, because they don't understand the idea of how to cope up with it, because nobody has taught them, nobody has spoken to them. So, looking at all of these things, voicing out your own opinion becomes really challenging for them then, and they become really scared of it. And that's a challenge that they face. Um, Dealing with mistakes and not performing well, I'm going to take it up together, is, I think, with young kids, as parents also, we are very protective, and as adults, we're very protective of them. We don't want them to go through anything negative, or we don't want them to go through any troublesome situation. And therefore, a lot of our protectiveness comes in the form of shielding them from making any mistakes. And a lot of times we might become very finicky about, ordering them and giving them a specific structure, that you have to only do these things in this way. If you do it, Like I can give you an example, is as small as, after every kid have a playing time, then they're playing with their toys and everything. And kids have this habit of like getting all the toys together, and then they'll just throw it in the entire room or the entire floor, and then they play with everything. Even if they're not playing with things, it's just there. And then after that, a lot of kids just get up and go. They don't clean their mess. And as parents, as important it is for our kids to like teach them how to clean their mess, a lot of times we become very restrictive and very structured, that you have to clean your mess in a specific way. If you don't clean it in this way, so like pick this toy first, then put it in your bag. And if they're not doing it in the same order as you want, then probably we become angry or we become irritated, or we tell them that no, you're not doing it right, it's completely wrong. And what it does, or what's the takeaway that the child gets from this, is if I don't do things in a very specific manner and do a little bit here and there, it's wrong, or I am a bad child, or I am not doing it completely fine. And it's a lot of pressure and stress. And this is just a tiny example, but just this concept of you have to do a particular thing in a specific way, because if you don't do it in a specific way, that is considered as a mistake. That is considered as you haven't done well. That is considered as you are not, I'm sorry, you're not doing things right. That's a very, it stays with you as a concept. And therefore, kids don't want to maybe try anything new. They don't want to indulge in any new experiences because they are so used to doing things in a very specific way. So, dealing with mistakes also means you would have to allow kids to sometimes make mistakes. But the idea that they have to deal with mistake, how will they deal with mistake, whether parents will be okay with it or not, or whether they get scoldings, whether teachers will be okay with it or not, is a challenge that kids constantly face. Similarly, not performing well, not just academically. Academically performing well is definitely a pressure that kids face, but even non academically, if they have a hobby, if they're participating in a competition, or if they're just participating even in annual functions. Oh, I think there's a power cut from my end. It'll just be back in 2 minutes. So give me a
No
second.
problem, Poorvasha.
Yeah, it'll just be back in 2 minutes. So I'm sorry for that.
Yeah, no problem.
Yeah, so yeah, I'm just going to continue. But yes, um, not performing well, even non-academically, that even, those annual functions that kids have in that school, in their school, for them or for kids, it should be technically just you have to be there, perform, have fun, and then learn whatever you want. But as adults, as parents, we tend to very unconsciously a lot of times also put in a lot of pressure that you have to be a certain way, or you have to do all the steps correctly. If you don't do it, then parents will feel disappointed, or they might feel sad. And all of these things really become a huge burden and challenges for kids that they deal with. The last and the most important one, and which is very difficult for parents also to deal with, is this transition between adulthood, like from childhood to adulthood, when people experience, or when kids experience the transition that's happening, wherein they are going, or they are sort of going from a space of being kids to becoming slowly teenagers. There's a lot of changes that happens physically, mentally, emotionally. Body is going through so many changes. um, the hormones are haywire. Even at that time, the class that they are in, like 8th standard, 9th standard, things are changing, syllabus is changing. There's a lot of things that they're changing. And for a kid, it's way too overwhelming to experience these changes. And as much as it's a natural part of life, again, as adults, we might, because we have experienced it and we feel it's natural, we might not pay a lot of attention to it. But for kids, it's really troublesome and it's really heavy to deal with. And during this time, it's also, kids do experiences experience a lot of confusion because they don't know what's happening. Their friends don't know what's happening, so they don't know where to seek out any advice from. At that age, they also start becoming a little bit more self-conscious, so they feel a little hesitant to talk to their parents also about it. So that barrier automatically increases. So kids really feel alone. A lot of times they feel very lonely. A lot of times they feel very alone, and that is also one of the most important and significant change and challenges that a kid experiences, wherein they really, really need help. So these are majorly the prominent changes that I could come up with that I've experienced and I've sort of uh, taken up from all the kids around me that they go through. Now, how to build resilience? Now we come to the important point is what is it that us as adults, as parents, we can provide or we can bring to the table to teach kids or to even help them to be resilient. Now, couple of things that are very, very important. Actually, just top three things that are very, very important is number one, relationships for kids. Now, when I say relationship for kids, the primary relationship and the most important relationship initially that they share is by default with their parents, with their mom, with their dad. And then, secondly, like if there's anybody else in the house, like grandparents or siblings, that comes secondary. And then automatically, the tertiary would be if they're going to school. So the teachers there, the friends there, these relationships. But majority, prominently, a kid always rely on their parents for any kind of support. So, if parents have a very safe, a very healthy, a very non judgmental relationship with their kids, or at least they try to build that, and if kids have this understanding or this confidence that no matter what I do, no matter what decisions I make, no matter what mistakes I make, I can go to my parents, they have my back. This doesn't mean that you have to be supportive as parents all the time. Like if your kid is making a mistake, call them out, discuss about it, teach them about consequences and impact of things, scold them also. But this understanding that a child is not only limited to their mistakes don't define the child. They are okay to make mistakes, but at the same time, they can always rely on their parents for support is a very relieving and confident feeling that kids really look for, especially the young kids, because they do not have that cognitive understanding to completely rely on themselves. They want the adults to sort of tell them that it's okay, you can rely on me. Like if you have a fight with your friend, your parents are going to help you in figuring out how to go about it. If you have probably flunked an exam or scored really low in your exam, in particular exam, the idea that it's okay, we are not here, we are not going to abandon you just because you've made one mistake, but let's figure out how to improve, let's figure out how you can do better. And that kind of confidence of somebody has my back is a very, very important thing that helps a child to be resilient because then they feel more confident. So, focusing on building a safe relationship with your child is something that automatically you will see if you're trying to focus on that, you'll see automatically your child being more resilient, being more confident, being more adaptive to any situation that they're dealing with. And not just with your kids, but even with each other. Like if the household is safe, is if they can also see that, if one parent is stressed about something, the other parent is not scolding that parent, but sort of helping it. Okay, like if this is something happening in your meeting, if a meeting didn't go well, discussing about it, helping them around it. And if the child is also able to see that, oh, parents also help each other, so I can also ask for help, and that's the kind of safety that they've built that really impacts a child's resilience or the quality of being resilient. Similarly, normalizing experiencing changes in life. Now, as we discussed, those changes for a kid can be huge changes, but for an adult, we know that eventually kids will be okay. But as much as it's okay for the kids to be stressed, and you can let them be stressed about these changes because these are legit changes for them. These are big changes. Give them space to try new things also so that they're not scared of the idea of change. It could be as small as, and these things start in a very subtle and tiny way. Say, for example, a change honestly could be trying a new food item. Like, if we are going out and the child wants to try a new food item, even if as an adult, you know that it's gonna be horrible and the child is gonna hate it, just for that experience, letting your child to taste it and let the child realize it on their own that, oh, I ate it, it sucked and it was really horrible. They become more confident and comfortable with the idea of change. Because if we don't let them exposed to these situations, they're only thinking about what could have happened, what would happen. And that's a fantasy world. So if we don't, for example, allow the child to taste this dish that we know is horrible, but they have no idea, they'll constantly be in the fantasy world of that, oh, but what if that dish was really nice and my parents didn't let me have it? What if it was the best thing ever? I didn't know. And just that fantasy or just the idea of what could have happened is really unsettling, and it really impacts a child's ability to not adapt to changes anymore, because later, after a point when we want them to be okay with certain changes, they would be very resistant because they don't know how to deal with it. But if a child is open to a challenge or a change, a lot of times outcome could be really positive. A lot of times outcome could be negative, but during these negative outcomes, then it becomes important to understand how to deal with it. But just to exposing them, a lot of times as parents, again, we become very protective that, you shouldn't go to that friend's house to play because you have never gone there, so don't go. And a lot of these worry is our worry because we are scared, because we are protective of the child. But what it does is that if you're constantly being scared, or we are constantly projecting our anxiety on the child and not allowing the child to expose themselves to changes, they also become very restrictive and they become scared of any change, either positive or negative, because they are not able to differentiate what is a positive change and what is a negative change. So, normalize letting them experience changes. A lot of times, even when you know that this is not going to work out, it's okay. Let them learn from it. Let them experience it so that they're not scared of making a mistake. Risk taking and dealing with failure. Now, when I say risk taking, I'm not even talking about like big risk taking things, but for a child, in a child's world, even raising their hand in a full of like a bunch in a class full of kids can be a little risky, and they can be a little nervous about it. Similarly, trying a new hobby can be a risk for a child. Speaking in a group can be a risk for a child. And these risks are a little, like, they can make a child a little nervous because we don't know the outcome of it. You can either succeed in these things. For example, the child, maybe if they raise their hand and they ask a question, it can be applauded, or it can be a good question, and they might not get any mockery. But a lot of times, if they're asking a question, maybe they'll get a mockery. Maybe the teacher will only get the stupid question, or maybe the kids will make fun of them. That is towards the negative side. So, risk taking and dealing with failure is a very, very important and natural part of childhood that as parents, we would have to allow the kids to go through it. If we keep telling our kids to be perfect, if we keep telling our kids to be very cautious, that be very cautious of what you're asking, don't ask stupid questions, be very cautious of what you are doing. If you are doing a particular hobby, you have to be good at it, you have to succeed. If we start associating every task as a failure or or something to succeed in, kids become very restrictive and they're constantly scared of, if I don't perform well, then it's going to be a failure and then it'll be disappointing to other people, and it takes away the fun for them. So let them take risks. but teach them how to be okay with it also. Like, even if they are not succeeding all the time, it's okay. Even if they asked a question which was technically stupid, it's okay. They don't constantly have to be the smartest person in the room. They don't constantly have to excel at everything that they do. If they want to, try a hobby, like a lot of times, kids. I remember there's a kid that I work with, 7-year old child. He is really good at football, so that is something that he's always been really good at. But now he's like, I'm bored of football. I want to try dancing. Now, in my opinion, as an adult, to be very honest, the child is horrible at dancing. Like, the child cannot dance, but the child really enjoys dancing. So I think recently they wanted to participate in a in an annual function, but they wanted to perform in dance category. But what happened is that the parents discouraged them that no, no, you're not supposed to dance. You don't look really good. You will spoil it for the entire group, and that was like really heartbreaking for the child because the child really enjoys dancing. And this is just a tiny example, but the fact that we sort of and it's also a tiny thing, like for a child to perform on a stage in an annual function, even if the child doesn't do amazing, like a great performance, probably it'll be okay. Like, it'll be fine. The child will be fine. But since the parents felt embarrassing, and the parents were not okay with it, they didn't know how to deal with it. They didn't know what to tell the child if the child is getting mocked at. They discouraged the child, and that's how they sort of shielded him from trying something new. So, as parents, we feel that we are trying to protect the kids by doing it. But to be very honest, we are taking their space to cope up or to learn how to cope up with things. So, risk taking and dealing with failure is something that as adults we would have to be okay with when our kids are going through it. Now, skills and toolkit. So, there are a couple of skills that even as an adult we need to have in ourselves and then pass it on to our kids or learn how to teach them how to go ahead with it. There are a couple of things that I wanted to discuss as skills that I'm going to quickly touch upon is being persistent. Being persistent is irrespective of what the consequence of your decision making is. In the sense that if a child is doing something which in turn turned out to be great, we feel that okay, that should be happening, so that's great. But if it turned out to be something negative or something not that great, we tend to a lot of times, shame them, or if not shame them, we tend to discourage them from trying it the other time. That, last time you tried this, it didn't really work out well. So it's okay, chuck it. You don't have to try it again. That was a learning experience. But what it does is that it completely discourages the child from trying anything. So our idea here is to praise them for trying because trying in itself is effort. Whatever the consequences, now consequences are not something that is in your control and you can't really control them. But the fact that they tried, they put in effort, and if as adults, we can praise them for that, that really boosts their confidence and their own self worth. They think that they have done something or they have the capability to do something and they don't have to be completely perfect. So, being persistent as an adult, we would also have to allow and give them access to being persistent by encouraging them instead of discouraging them from trying anything new or trying something which probably in the past did not work out, but they want to try it again. Even that requires a lot of encouragement. As we discussed a little earlier, as adults, we need to avoid predicting and preventing every problem for the child. A lot of times, kids of this middle age, they sometimes can be very stubborn. That if sometimes, as parents or as adults, we are telling them that, this answer that you have written or the essay that you have written in your school for your homework, that's not really appropriate. A lot of times they're like, no, I feel like it's fine and I want to go ahead with it. Now, in these situations, as much as you know as an adult that the child is not going to get great marks for that homework, or maybe the teacher will not like that homework, but for us to just let them go ahead with it because they feel that they have done something great and then learn from it. Like, what's the worst that can happen? That either the teacher will not like the homework or they'll get a little bit less marks in their homework. But at least they will understand that even if they have made a mistake, it's okay. It's not the end of the world. And B, that if they feel sad about getting bad marks, at least they will be able to understand how to cope with it. That yes, they made a decision which turned out to be making them sad, but they have to cope with it. So there's a lot of strength that is required for that. But if we keep protecting them from making any mistake or feeling sad or feeling hurt, then they will never be able to even know how to learn how to cope with these mistakes because we are not letting them feel that. So we have to avoid preventing them from any problem. Being a role model is one of the most important things because kids learn from whatever they see. And when I say being a role model, it means that a lot of times in the household when we are living, the kind of conversations that we have with each other as adults can be really stressful and worrisome at times. If you're talking amongst each other about a tiny thing that, oh, let's go for this particular movie. If that movie turned out to be good, nobody talks about it. But if that movie turned out to be bad, there will be a full blown discussion that, oh, we shouldn't have gone for that movie. It was such a waste of time. It was such a waste of money. From next time, we won't do it. And all of this conversation, if this is the kind of household that is the child is exposed to constantly, where one of the parents or both the parents are worried about everything, that, oh, you can't be late 1 minute also. What if you get late? What if then you will miss your bus, or the teachers will scold you, this, that. There's a constant feeling of anxiety that the kids pick up. And even if you're not telling the child anything, they pick up that you are constantly worried about everything. So, as parents, as adults, it becomes our responsibility also to be a role model of being patient, of being confident in our decisions. And even if you're stressed, show them how you handle it also. Just showing them that you are stressed, there's no takeaway from it. So, I'm not saying don't show them you're stressed. Show your emotions to them, but also make them a part of dealing with it. That if your parents or your mom was stressed for some particular thing, how did she cope up with it, or what did she do so that she feels a little bit better? So that they have the mindset of, you can feel anything you want, but there's always a solution to everything, and you can bounce back from it. And they learn from the environment, they learn from looking at adults a lot. They don't learn it just by themselves. Recognize and acknowledge when things are going well. A lot of times we fail to do this. A lot of times as adults, we focus so much on this should not happen or you should not make a mistake. When they actually do something well, when they actually do not make a mistake, we don't really appreciate them. So use a lot of praising words. For Praise them for putting in effort. Praise them for, I'm glad that you participated. I'm glad that you tried to ask a question. Or I'm proud of you to, even think about that you would like to participate in something. And all of this really helps a child to think about their own positives also. That, oh, I am a capable child, or oh, I can do this. I They are able to recognize their own strengths. So keep praising your child, if not praising, making them recognize their own strengths instead of just focusing on their weaknesses. Like, as much as that's important, praising is also equally very, very important. Solving problems are in the way of teaching them a solution oriented approach, uh, developing problem solving skills, that even if they have made a mistake in the school, even if, for example, they went to school and they yelled at their friend or they had a fight with their friend. When they come back and tell you, of course, as parents, we scold them a little bit, but then also we would have to teach them what better can you do the next time. If we just leave the kids by scolding that you shouldn't do this, is a bad thing, you are a bad child, what about it? The only thing that stays with them is they made a mistake and now parents are upset. But if you actually tend to acknowledge what better can you do next time? How can you improve? What are the strategies that you can try next time? What does improvement look like? It will also help them realize that there's scope for improvement. They are again not limited to just mistakes. Mistakes can be improved, they are not permanent. So, and this will take a lot of efforts and a lot of investment from us as adults. We would have to sit with them, figure out and discuss what solution could look like, or how do you want to solve this problem, or uh, what better can we do? How can we improve? And focusing a lot more on that can really help the child to feel at ease and develop their own cognitive and problem solving skills. And the last that we have discussed again before as well, understanding and managing emotions. As adults, we sometimes very casually dismiss a child's emotions. We don't pay a lot of attention. We don't think those emotions are significant enough. And even the child then feels that, oh, my emotion doesn't matter. If I'm sad, it doesn't matter. Or if I'm hurt, it doesn't matter. We need to start learning how to validate those emotions. Even if in your head you think that it's stupid and it's not making sense, which happens, don't say it to the child because for the child, it is a big thing. So validate their emotions, reassure them that right now, maybe for 1 week or for 3 days, they might feel sad because the class is shuffled and they don't have the same friends anymore. However, it's okay for them to feel sad. But at the same time, we are also learning how to solve that problem. We are also learning how to make new friends. What can we do to make new friends? How can we make the situation a little bit better? So, a combination of all these skills is something that as an adult, we would have to inculcate in ourselves and then help the child to learn and sort of learning it together. Just teaching the child that you should solve problems, you should have a better understanding might not work if you are not, or we are not projecting it, or we are not showing it to the child. So it works both ways. A little bit you learn from the kids, and the kids learn from you. And the last thing that on which I would probably end the presentation is environment plays a very, very important role. As much as resilience is a individual skill, it comes with the environment as well. If the environment is very stressful, if the environment is constantly anxious, no matter how resilient the kid can become, they won't be able to push through it. So, also be mindful of what kind of environment or what kind of environment you are creating for the child. At home, even at school, what is the environment? Is it a constantly stressed environment? Or even at school, the child, like the authorities are allowing the child to make certain mistakes and allowing that space. So, environment also plays a very, very important role. All right, I'm gonna pause the presentation now and I'm gonna discuss any questions if anyone have.
Yeah, participants, if you have any questions for Purvasha, please put it in the Q&A section. So, Purvasha, one of our participants is asking, what about mistakes that are done intentionally?
Okay, like how to deal with them.
Yeah, how to deal with mistakes that are done intentionally.
Right, makes sense. That's true. Like a lot of times kids do things intentionally also. I think during that time, one of the things that becomes a little bit important is our curiosity. Curiosity as a parent to be curious that why did the child do that? Of course, I am. even as a therapist, I'm in a big favor of teaching them, teaching the kids the importance of consequences of their actions. So if they did something which is a mistake very intentionally, it's important for us to teach them that, hey, you did this, and the consequence of this particular action is this. Like somebody got hurt, somebody felt sad, or something. So you need to sort of pay the consequences of it. It's a very important thing that we need to make the child learn. However, it also becomes very important for us to understand the intention of the child, that where is the child coming from? Why did they choose to probably make that mistake at the first place? Were they able to understand what it is as a mistake? Or they did it out of curiosity? They did it because they thought it's a fine thing to do. And once you try to understand the reasoning behind it, as adults also, you'll be able to deal with it better. Because if then you can teach them why is it a problematic thing at the first place, or why they should not do it again. So key thing that I at least feel like would be curiosity, to know why they did it at the first place. And then of course you can go ahead and scold them.
Right. So, talking about curiosity, one of our parent is asking that the kid is in grade one and he's always curious. Is that okay?
Oh, absolutely all right. It's an absolutely age appropriate thing. They will be curious about everything in the world because they're not in a they don't have the ability right now to know what is appropriate curiosity and what is inappropriate curiosity. They don't know that right now. So they're going to be curious about everything.
Right, right. Very true. Uh, okay. There's one more parent. She's asking, her child is very confident for every time, and how can a parent handle that?
Okay. I am not sure why is that a problem.
One more parent is asking, hello, ma'am, I'm moving into a new city as I myself have to deal with many things. Maybe the question is, how can, they help children deal with?
Right, right. Okay. So, yeah, moving cities becomes one of the very significant challenges for a child because it's like uprooting their entire life to a new city and adjusting to that. Um, I think one thing that really helps the process a little bit better is constantly letting them know what they can expect. So if you're going to a new city, how much ever information you have about a new city, about where you're going to stay, what the school is, constantly providing that information to the child so that the child has an idea of what to expect. And that really helps the child to deal with these changes relatively better.
Perfect. Uh, Parents, we have any other questions? Okay. How to get a child motivated specifically about studies?
Okay, that's a tough one. But I think a lot of it would depend on a lot of discipline, and not a harsh kind of a discipline, but see, any child by default is not someone who will resort to studying by themselves. Like it is a boring thing. Like it is a very boring thing. But yes, it is a part of their life. They have to study, and it's very important. So try structuring a little bit in their life, in the sense that instead of only focusing on that you have to study, make it a little bit holistic so that they are also involved in a couple of other fun things. And in the middle of it, studies is also something that they have to do. Um, it's difficult for kids to sort of make discipline in that way because no kid wants to study. But one of the things like their screen time, that needs to be tapped into a little bit, because if a child is constantly on screen, that automatically makes the child really tired, really, really drowsy. They don't feel like get interested in anything. So that's why a sort of structuring wherein all the kind of activities is involved little by little, and studies is also there, that might help the child to study.
Okay. One of a parent is asking that the child always feels very bad when he fails to do something. How can a parent help there?
Okay. See, it's very natural for anybody, and especially a child, to feel naturally very sad if they are not able to do something or if they're failing at something. It's okay. I think the most important thing that as parents we need to keep imbibing or inculcating or letting the child know that uh, it's all right to fail. Like, it's completely all right to fail. Just because they're failing at certain things doesn't mean that they are a failure as a child. But again, shifting the perspective from, oh, I failed and it's a terrible thing, to, okay, I failed, that's a sad thing, but what can I learn from it again also? How can I make it better? What can I do next time wherein probably I try not to fail? Like, what are the efforts that I can put to not fail the next time? And sort of slowly shifting that perspective, that might help the child also to deal with it a little bit better. And also focus on how you react as parents. When a child is failing, are you instantly disappointed? Are you instantly sad? Are you instantly angry? Because if that's the case, then the child also feels like their failing impacts you. So you would also have to check with yourself how you react to it.
Okay. Uh, we'll take this last question. A participant says that my adolescent daughter is not ready to move to live with my spouse who's working abroad. Is there any specific reason in this in space of child psychology?
I am assuming that again, it's a huge lifestyle change for the child, and given the thing that the child is an adolescent, um, it's like, and it's a completely different place. So it means like they would have to build everything from scratch, from friends to what they like, the kind of like anything that they had in surroundings. They would have to build everything from scratch, and that's extremely overwhelming. So it's very natural for the child to not agree to move. But I think the similar thing that I mentioned before, that it's okay because it's a very big change and the child might not be okay with it. But to have conversations with the child about what to expect, what can they expect if they go there, how can both the parents are going to support the child if they don't feel good, in what ways the parents can support the child. Having these kind of conversations, it won't make the child instantly change their decision, but at least they'll feel more supported. They'll
Right.
feel a little bit more relieved.
Yes, absolutely. We have one more question. How to safeguard children from bad influence while allowing them to enjoy life?
It's to be very honest, it's a little hard. It's a little bit of gray area because as parents, you can try to control certain aspects of them, but eventually you can't control a majority of it. But I think a lot of it depends on what kind of moral grounds are we setting for the child. So at home, or specifically at home as parents, if we are very thorough with explaining them what bad influence is and why it is a bad influence at the first place, from a perspective of explaining them and not from a perspective of controlling them, that hey, you're not supposed to do this, or hey, you're not supposed to mingle with these kids, because that feels more controlling and kids
Right.
don't respond well to control. But explaining it to them that, if you indulge in these things, these are the consequences of these actions, which might not be very appropriate, that might sit better with kids to make decisions.
Right. Right. Okay, I guess we are done with the questions from the participants. This was really, really an engaging webinar, Purvasha. I mean, there's so much as a parent for me also to take from here. And to do the formalities, yes, on a closing note, and with that, we come to an end of our webinar. And I really thank Purvasha for helping us understand how crucial it is to build resilience for young learners and how we as parents can empower them. And to my dear parents, thank you so much for joining us today. We hope this webinar gives you meaningful insights and practical tips to support your child's overall development. And on behalf of VIBGYOR Group of Schools, your participation and engagement means a lot to us. If you have any further questions or you wish to speak to us, please feel free to reach out to us on our line called 600 3700. Before you go on our chat box, we have a feedback link. We would love to hear from you your feedback on this particular session. Please uh, fill that link. And on that note, I thank you everyone for being a part of this conversation. Thank you so much, Poorvasha, once again. I'm signing off. Have a great evening ahead. Thank you.